Good afternoon, everyone. You're now listening to The Common Thread, the official podcast for the Howard Thurman Center. My name is Howard DePass Jr.
My name is Issa Kenyatta.
I'm Greg Wilson.
And today we have two very, very fine guests on our show. You all want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Skailer, and I'm a junior at Boston University.
I'm Zach, and I'm a freshman at Wheelock College.
Awesome. So, first of all, thank you all for coming on the show. I know, midterm season never really stops.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I feel like that this is prime time to have you on. But so thank you all for coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Just taking time out of your day is really precious to us. But I want to get into just a question. We basically cyber stalked you, so don't worry. So just exactly what we did. And I want to get, if you can just listen, get the common thread, the listeners to kind of understand more of who you are, give us a brief bio, how you guys met. That'd be great for everyone else who didn't cyber stalk you guys. So.
Well, I'll start. So I'm Zach. I was born in Massachusetts, and I identify myself as transgender. I was born biologically female, one of 3 identical triplet girls. But from a very young age, I've always known that I was male, and have thus taken the steps in my life to become transition into my male affirmed gender. I guess you can go now. Introduce yourself.
Okay, sure. I'm Skailer. I was born and raised in San Diego, California, and then I moved up to Northern California, a little bit outside of San Francisco, and lived there for the rest of my life until I came out here to BU. I identify as a gay transgender man, so I was born biologically female like Zachary, and I now live my life as a man, and I always liked other men. So I always knew that I found the boys cute, but now I just happen to be a boy too.
And the two of us, we are dating, and we met on a website for it's kind of, I always call it the transgender Facebook. Mm-hmm. So it's called Trans Queer Nation, and what it was is you make your profile and stuff, and it's a website for networking and getting to talk with other transgender people. And I was looking on the website, and I saw Skylar's picture, and to be completely honest, I thought he was cute, so I was like, okay, let's do this, and I added him, and then he messaged me on the site being like, oh my god, we're both in marching band, this is so awesome.
Yeah.
And so we just started talking, and even though he lived in California and I lived in Massachusetts, we were we both just kind of liked each other, so all right, let's do it. So after we met February 6th 2011, and then on April 28th 2011 within that we started kind of having an open relationship because we live so far away. But April 28th 2011 we officially closed our relationship and considered that the date we really started dating exclusively.
Right.
And so it'll be 3 years this April 28th.
Nice.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, absolutely.
They even had the exact dates, which
That's the crazy part.
Zachary has the exact dates. I can't remember my dad's birthday.
homework assignment.
Yeah, it was but the first year and three months we dated, we never met each other. We'd only ever contact each other through phone calls, texting,
Skype.
Facebook, and Skype.
Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely. So did you guys, you talked about your similarities and everything, did you guys have a similar path in discovering your identity? Is that something that bonded you, or?
I feel like my path, I don't know how he feels, but my path is very different from his. I came from a path where when I came out, everyone's like, okay, we knew. We could have seen this coming. We totally saw this. When I came out, it ended up just kind of being a very natural thing for me to transition and for this to be happening. My parents, my siblings, and everyone were very much on board with it. And it was kind of it was a surprise, but not a surprise. I think his was a little different, though.
Yeah, I surprised everyone, the boulders and cartoons that just roll everything over out of the blue. That was kind of my coming out. No one had any idea that I possibly could have been trans. I was always pretty feminine and bubbly, and people always just assumed oh, you're just a kind of sporty girl that's still really feminine. But my parents are 2 mental health workers, so I'm coming out to them as transgender. It was a shock to them. It was a shock to everyone, but they all turned out to be really accepting in the end after some education happened. But I definitely surprised people.
Yeah.
Well, if you guys could speak to that sort of education element, because I feel like transgender is something that people still don't necessarily understand, and you guys must have had to learn it and then sort of self-identify with that. So where did you learn about this whole concept, and how did you sort of come to teach everybody else about it?
The internet's an amazing
the internet,
thing.
Wikipedia.
I found out when I was 14. I was like on the computer at like 4 in the morning, which is stupid because all I want to do is sleep now. And I just like was on Wikipedia and I Wikipedia'd the word gay. And then from there, I was just like looking and like reading stuff, and then I found the word transgender. And when I found that word, I like read the definition, was kind of like, this is me, this is who I am. And then I did what every good American teenager does, and I Googled it. And I just like put it into Google, and I like read like, like for most things, if it's not in the first like 3 pages of Google, it doesn't exist. Well, I read like beyond that. I read like 50 pages into Google. Anything that had trans in it, I read it, and I just with everything I read, I was like, this is me.
So at that point in time, did you identify as gay?
At that point in time, I identified as a lesbian, yes.
Okay.
And so I had a similar story. I like up late on the internet, bored, going through the gay Wikipedia page, and then I discovered the word transgender. But unlike Zachary, I went to YouTube instead, so I watched a lot of videos and listened to people talking about their transgender experiences, because being transgender is not something that's mentioned in health classes. It's not talked about in schools, and it's just now finally hitting the media. And so a lot of trans kids, when they discover they're trans, they want to put themselves out there as a resource for other trans kids to like bring up visibility. So that's where I got a lot of my education, from people who were trying to put themselves out there after they learned through Wikipedia and other sources.
Yeah, absolutely. And was it difficult to like transition into the LGBTQ community? Like, was that a difficult transition, or was like just kind of like coming home type of feeling, like family?
I would say it was like coming home, because I finally felt like there was a group of people that could understand a lot of my struggles. But at the same time, while there's discrimination amongst normal society, there's also discrimination within the LGBT community against transgender people.
I've never even.
Wow, I've never heard of
well,
that.
like when I came out, I was a part. I identified as a lesbian. I was a part of the LGBT community. When I came out as trans, I felt distanced from the LGBT community because there were no trans people. There was no trans representation. There were no trans people that I knew. No one I've ever like saw. No one on like the internet. Nothing. That was who were trans. How were living a good life or were like me. So I even felt like okay, there's this T in LGBT, but the T doesn't actually exist.
We say like the T is silent. Like there's LGBT, but you don't ever see the T.
Really?
Like when we were growing up looking for transgender role models, the only time you'd ever hear about trans people in the media was if they were like beaten, killed, or were part of a crime in some way.
And a lot of the time a lot of what you did hear or see was, especially in like different like portrayals of the media, like movies and stuff, would be male to female, and they'd be a joke.
Right.
And just to backtrack a little bit, and this will tie into the general gist of what we're talking about. Zach, you mentioned earlier that you've pretty much always had a sense that of your identity struggles in a sense. Can you just elaborate on that? Maybe talk about maybe an earlier experience, whether it's like in elementary school, middle school, something like that, and so how you came to really identify as who you are today.
Yeah, well, from very, very young, I always identified as male, even things I don't remember. Like when I came out as trans, my parents told me when I was as young as when I was 3 years old, when people asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would say I want to be a boy. But it wasn't, looking back in my life, it was just small things that like kind of built up to being a bigger thing. Like whenever I did like pretend play with my sisters and stuff, I wanted to be, I was always a boy character. I always wanted, if we were playing family, I wanted to play the brother. And, just the thing, like, I always tried to wear my big brother's clothes. And I remember as young as second grade, when I would, like, try to wear my big brother's clothes to school, I remember one day I was wearing, like, this really baggy white t-shirt, these, like, really baggy, like, black shorts, because I was, like, really into Eminem in second grade.
Yes, why not?
And,
who was it?
yeah, and so I'm dressed like in my big brother's clothes, and I look like an idiot because they're so much bigger than me. And my parents were like, "No, go take those clothes off." And I cried, and I take the clothes off. But what I would do is that I would put my brother's clothes into my backpack, and then I would change on my bus ride to school into my boys' clothes. I'd wear them throughout the day, and then I'd change back on the bus ride home, which for me was really indicating, like, because the bigger part of it was that growing up, me and my sister Amy, the oldest one of my triplets, we were both self-proclaimed tomboys. We dressed like boys, we did boy things, all of our best friends were boys, and our sister Sarah was a girly girl, and we like tortured her for that. But what was happening was, when I grew up and realized, Amy grew out of being a tomboy and I never did. It was like me doing these very extreme things just to wear boys' clothes and just to do masculine things.
Okay, because that was going to be something that I also wanted to touch on as well. I'm sure that you all may have heard the argument, about sort of societal constructs. And I guess, how did you, and maybe, if you just want to restate this, how did you figure out that there came a time when it wasn't just like, you sort of opposing the societal construct that, like, only guys wear baggy clothes and, girls are like super feminine, but at one point, like you said, your sister grew out of that and you sort of tailored towards that extreme?
It was just, honestly, the way I look at it and the way everyone looked at it, it was just who I was. When I wore boys' clothes, it was just who I was. No one batted an eyelash because it was, especially like going into 8th grade when I really did officially become, identify as trans. When I came and never wore girls' clothes ever again, no one questioned it. If I had come in to school and not identified as trans and never wore girls' clothes ever again, no one would have questioned it. It was just who I was. Right. And I think there was like this aspect of like, yes, there was like the tomboy aspect and, me being continuing more, but all of it was just about, it was me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think anywhere when you start finding your own identity of who you are, there's a sense of bravery in like coming out and like telling people the world like who you identify as. And I find that so interesting that a lot of times we do find a sense of self, but we don't usually give back to people who are still lost. But I think what's so great about Zach and Skailer is they're both giving back. And do you want to elaborate more on that, Zach, especially like since he's basically a superstar, you guys? I'm just letting you guys know that. Like, for real. Zach is a superstar. And so if you can just talk about that and even your like interactions with the Halo Awards and Nickelodeon.
I mean, just to backtrack real quick.
Oh, yeah.
Because I want to hear your perspective, Skailer. Now, you said yours was more out of the blue. So how did you sort of deal with everything as you were growing up?
When I was younger, I was pretty girly as a kid. Like, I loved the princess gowns and all the sparkly heels and, like, Barbie stilettos, like, my favorites.
You still love all those things.
Oh, yeah, I still like the glitter. But, I always was really distressed that, like, none of the boys would play with me and, like, I wasn't involved in their sports and, like, they would not play with me or associate me because I was a girl. And that continually made me mad and frustrated me all the way up through high school. And it was finally, like, in high school when someone said, you're a woman, like, you're a girl, like, we're not gonna, like, roughhouse with you or wrestle with you, like, we can't. And, like, I looked at my male friend Carlos, I'm like, why can't I? Like, give me a reason other than the fact that, like, I'm a woman, because him calling me that made me so viscerally uncomfortable. That was when I realized, something out of the ordinary is up. This is not normal. Someone who, like, has already gone through puberty, who looks like a woman, should not, like, feel uncomfortable with being called a woman.
Right. So, like Issa said, obviously you guys came to terms with your sense of identity. And not only did you come to terms with it, but, like you said before, you had no sort of lifeline to cling on to when you were trying to discover yourselves, and now you guys are sort of serving as that for other people. So how did you guys start this movement?
For me, there was already a movement starting. It was already out there that, it was, especially like I started doing a lot of this work that I do about 3 years ago. And that's really, I think, around when this movement was really kicking off. I've seen it grow so much more since then. And I think for me, the movement, I started doing this because of how depressed and hopeless my life felt because I felt like there was no one like me. And that because of that, I was like, I did not have a life, and no one knew about like me. There were no people like me. There was no one who knew about me, people like me, and there was no one who could support me and who understood. Like, all of these doctors I had to see, the therapists, my parents, my siblings, everyone would be like, I'm sure what you're going through is horrible. I cannot understand. I'm like, I know you can't, and no one can. So it was just feeling like that there needed to be something there. Someone needed to start, like, there needed to be someone to start really, telling people this is who we are. And I felt that growing up, because I didn't have that, I didn't want that to be the reality for any more trans kids growing up, because I was so like depressed and sad and felt so alone because of that I didn't want that to be anyone else's reality. That I remember I was like 17 and I told myself, I've always wondered why this is the way I am, and I said it's because I have to help people. And that's the way I really rationalized it, and was like, if I'm gonna be like this, I need to be helping people. So from there I started doing the work that I do, and and then a big part of that also is being able to educate providers and people who spend a lot of time who will be spending a lot of time with trans kids, because for me that was another frustration of being like, these people are pretty much the ones taking care of me for most, but even especially at school and stuff where I spend most of my day, and I'm like, and if anything were to happen to me, I'd have no one. So I just, I started small by educating my own teachers, and then through the work that I do in the organizations I work with, I've been able to work in bigger groups doing professional developments and being able to reach out a lot more to people who will be having interactions with trans kids.
And how have they received that, your perspective and like what you've had to say? Because I know sometimes, especially when it comes from someone who's your superior, sometimes they might not always be 100% willing to like hear you out or like change the way they maybe facilitate a discussion or their point of view about something. Have the people who you personally had interactions with and sort of educating them, who are older than you, whether they're professors or mentors or whatever have they been able to receive that well, and then you've seen them put it into action?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is that I have to see and has to happen is especially when working with people who work with kids like me all the time. I've been doing this work since I was 17, and they're like, and they see themselves as the superior. They gotta stop that role stops the minute I walk into the room and the training starts, because they are not the authority on this. And I think that's what it's really hard for teachers and a lot of people like that to realize that they don't know everything at this point.
Right.
But the first thing we do is we just make sure that they know, like, you may not understand this, and that is completely fine. But the minute I say that I'm trans, suddenly I become an authority, and they start to listen to me because I can finally answer their questions for them. And it's all about and I always like to say it's okay to not understand, but it's not okay to not try. So it's always about and I always phrase it around like, no matter what you feel about this, you want the students, the people you're interacting with, to be safe and happy. So this is why we're doing this, and this is why it's important. So I don't usually get shut down by many people. A lot of people, and also people are just curious about things they don't know about. So the minute they get to talk to a trans person, suddenly they want to know all the answers.
Especially since these groups are bringing us in, they're asking for assistance on things that they don't understand.
Right.
So they are bringing us in as authorities on transgender issues. Like, I work with a lot of doctors, and I do a lot of speakings with large groups of doctors and psychiatrists, and they understand this is a young university student coming to talk to them, and they all have their PhDs and went through med school. But they realize I've been through the system, and I can tell them how they can best assist their patients and the people they're working with, so that there's a good patient relationship with them, and they can truly get the most out of their experience.
Right. Absolutely. And I wanted to ask, after going through that discovery of finding who you are, what advice would you give to students or anyone trying to figure out that same type of struggle? What was that one piece of information or lesson you learned that really propelled you into where you are today?
That's a tough question.
Yeah.
I like how Zachary looks at me. I would say the one thing someone told me is it's okay to not know yourself, but take time to try. So
Absolutely.
it's kind of I didn't really understand what being trans meant for my future. I didn't know if it meant I could have a future, but I took the time to realize I am trans, but that's not all I am. So taking the time to realize you're more than one identity.
Right.
I'm trans, but I also am a BU student, and I live in College Hall, and a bunch of other random things that define me. It's not all just because I'm trans. I didn't get to BU because I'm trans.
Right.
So it's kind of taking time to tease out all your different identities and realize how they interact with each other.
Right.
Someone told me about that, and I was just my own intersectionality really is the cornerstone of helping me define my identity.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that for me it would just be not everyone is the same. Especially hearing that come from someone who's an identical triplet, I just cannot stress that enough. Not everybody's the same. I feel like there's just this frustration of seeing all other trans people and being like, well, I need to be like that, or I need to be like him, or I need to do this, I need to do that. It's like, no, you need to do what's right for you, and that's the most important thing, is just doing what you want to do. If you don't want to go on hormones, you don't have to do that. That doesn't make you any less trans, and that doesn't make you any less of a man or any less of a woman, or whoever you want to be. It's who you are, and the way you identify, that is you, and no one can take that away from you, because I feel like that for a lot of trans people, they felt for so long that there was something wrong with them, that there's something about them that they couldn't control. The one thing you can control now, once you know, is your identity. When you know your identity, that is yours, and no one can take that away from you.
Absolutely.
Skailer, you mentioned, so obviously you are a BU student, you live in Kilchan Hall. I just want to get an idea of how the BU community has, responded to you. Have you experienced a lot of people being welcomed? I know that there is a prominent, or you can correct me on this if not, a prominent LGBTQ community on campus, and like there are, different centers and so on and so forth. Just basically being on BU's campus and being a BU student, how has this experience been for you?
I would say the BU experience, being gay and trans, like a lot of the letters, it's actually been really, really fulfilling and like eye-opening. The acceptance that I find here at BU is greater than anywhere else I've been. Even in like queer spaces, I feel safer at BU, even if people don't know I'm gay, or like if I out myself, I feel more comfortable on BU campus. Like I've had a great experience with housing, I've had a great experience with club sports, and I wasn't legally male until this year, and so I was doing club sports as a male with female documentation, and I was still allowed to compete in like the male karate tournaments. So like there was a lot of really open and accepting people that even if they didn't know what being transgender was, like everyone on BU campus was willing to learn and willing to work with me, and it was all around a really great experience. Like as long as you're nice to people and just do your best to help them understand you, like you can work together as a team. There's a really great LGBTQ community on campus, but there's not a lot of solidarity within that community. It's pretty fractured. A lot of the groups don't really interact too much with each other. So I know to find like solidarity within my community, I actually tend to leave campus and work with greater organizations in Massachusetts, just because I feel like there's more consistency within it. But BU campus really has been the most amazing experience when it comes to living as an LGBTQ person. I wouldn't recommend any other place.
Right. And I think one term that's really passed around a lot is allies, allies for the community. And I wanted to know, what does that mean? Because I think a lot of people say like allies as well as supporting. Well, what's that support? Like, what does that look like? So what does it look like for you two?
And on top of that, sort of how supportive have the people in your immediate circle been? Your family. You have a lot of siblings. How supportive has everyone been in that, and how do you define allies, like he asked?
Well, I think for me, an ally, obviously an ally is someone who, just stands up for you and your rights, and understand that even if you are, gay, like you still deserve basic human rights. And I think for being trans, there's a bigger part of being an ally, and that's not thinking you have all the answers. I think one of the biggest things we like to see from trans allies is being able to ask questions and say, okay, what can I do for you? Because a lot of people who are allies to the trans community obviously aren't trans and don't understand the things that we need and that we go through. And the best thing that they can do for us is just to be able to ask, and to ask us for our help in supporting them on how to be an ally. And I know for my inner circle, I have like my triplet sisters, all my best friends. They're all really great. I think, and that was from just being, the biggest part of that was the fact that they did not understand when I came out, but that didn't matter. We were still friends. Nothing changed, and they weren't gonna let the fact that I was changing genders change our friendship. Just because I was transitioning doesn't mean I was a totally different person. And I've just had complete support from everyone, like my parents. My mom for a while wasn't too happy about me transitioning, but she eventually realized that the way I was going in my life, that if she would rather have a happy son than a dead daughter. So that really kind of turned her around a little bit. And I'm a triplet. She has two other girls that look exactly like me. I don't know what she was all upset about. But I was very supported, and I think it was just like simple things, just like asking me what I wanted and what I needed, and not treating me any different because of it.
Yeah, I would definitely say that's a great definition of ally. Someone who's like supportive, but if you don't understand, don't make assumptions. Like always ask. If you're unsure, just ask the questions you need to, and maybe like you'll learn something, and they'll be more open to educating you. My family was really supportive. My parents now are celebratory of me being trans. Like, they will meet strangers and be like, "Oh, want to hear about my great, awesome gay transgender son?" And my mom will just shout it to the heavens, and I'm like, "Really, Mom?" Like, my parents are getting to the point where they're almost gayer than I am, and I am pretty gay. Like, my parents are doing their own P-flag thing in California, like they're trying to do all this stuff with like LGBT community. I'm like, both of them are
awesome.
really straight, but like they're
That's
so
awesome.
great. They're celebratory now. They like want to throw gay parties. Like it's wonderful. My close friends were all pretty supportive at first. I had one friend of mine that took it really rough. He had a crush on me when I was a girl, and when I came out as trans, he got really upset and just told me, you know, in his words, like, pull your head out of your ass, like, you're a woman. And I said, well, you know, I'm not. And if you want to remain my friend, like, I'm willing to educate you, but I'm always here, like, if you choose to come back and, like, be friends with me. Mm-hmm. And so it took him a while, but he actually came around and said, you know what, like, I realized I was wrong. Like, let's do this together. And now he's a great supporter. So, like, even people at first that weren't supportive, like, over time, like, it's a transition for everyone, not just someone who's trans. So, like, over time, most people will become supportive because when it's your friend, like, you don't want to exile your friend because of that. They're still the same person. They just now, like, might have a little more facial hair or, like, a little bigger chest. Like, it's no big deal.
I think one of the biggest supports that happened when we, you know, for us, both of us transitioning and then meeting was for our families. Like, my parents had been, I was like a year or two, I'd already been, it must have been at least a year that I was already on transitioning, was in the process of getting medically transitioning with hormone treatments. My parents were cool about it. We were at that place where, like, we're like, all right, this is Zach, this is what we're doing, he is our transgender son, but Sky's parents weren't exactly there yet. And I think just being able to, like, for our parents, like, know, even if, like, they don't think they talk that much, but they, like, knew each other were there. Right. And just knowing that, like, for his parents, because he wasn't that far in his transition yet, for his parents to know me and to see me doing well and having, like, a really happy life, especially since we are very similar, and then, you know, being able to see that really helped his parents being able to, you know, really get behind a lot of his transitioning stuff.
Yeah, because my parents, they were all for me socially transitioning, and socially transitioning means, like, changing your clothes, your haircut, anything easily alterable. But medically transitioning involves hormones and doctors, and that's a more extreme step. And my parents weren't exactly ready for that yet because it scared them. And I told them, you know, I'm going to do it whether you like it or not. So I can either, like, do it by myself when I first turn 18, or I can do it under your roof. And, like, look, it turned out fine for Zachary. So, I mean, we're pretty similar. You know, it'll turn out fine for me, too. And eventually they got on board with that because they realized they'd rather have me be somewhere safe and at home while starting, like, my second puberty. Like, the biggest lie of biology class, like, you only do it once. We all get to do it twice. And so it was just, like, seeing Zachary go through his second puberty and then me starting my second puberty. My parents wanted me to do it at home, somewhere where they could be like, okay, like our child's okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So we want to try to wrap it up. A couple of conclusion questions. I know Howard had one.
Right. So I think one thing at BU that's been in the news a lot lately, within the past year, has been the passing of gender-neutral housing. And I know that's in effect right now. And student government made a really big push towards that. I just want to get your perspective, Skailer, on that, and whether you condone it, or, like, is that something that you'll use in your...
I'm already living gender neutral.
Oh,
I actually live with my best friend Kate. She and I have been living gender neutral. BU gave me gender neutral housing before they passed the bill. I've been living gender neutral. Gender neutral since I got here as a freshman.
Oh, wow.
When I had female documentation, they let me live with a male, and now that I have male documentation with gender neutral housing passing, I'm living with a female.
Yeah.
So it's really, like, housing was really open to accommodating trans students, but now with gender neutral housing, essentially they didn't pass that for specifically trans students. They passed that so everyone could live with whoever they wanted.
Right.
Like, you're an adult, like, live with who you want, who makes you happy. And, like, I think everyone should take advantage of it, because why put yourself in a random roommate situation when you could just live with your best friend who happens to be the opposite sex or like the opposite gender. I think it's great that we finally passed it and got on board, because BU was lagging behind a little bit when it came to being gender neutral and like gender friendly. So now that we've got this down, like, we've got some more things to go, but this is a great step forward.
Yeah,
Great.
absolutely. And I think, well, I say absolutely a lot, actually. I think my final question would be, so we talked about how, so it's just about asking, like, what would you require? And I think my question, and the audience as well, would be, what else would you want people to know about your community and where you come from? And how we can help better understand each other, in a sense, for those people who are disconnected and don't really understand the LGBTQ community.
I would definitely say the biggest thing is asking appropriate questions. Because as a trans person, like, people are always curious about my genitals and what's in my pants. And I'm just like, am I going to sleep with you? Because I'm pretty sure I'm not. So you don't need to know. So don't ask me.
Right.
Especially if I don't know someone very well. Like, there's a lot of questions like, oh, like, you know, what's going on with your body? Because people just want to know. But, you know, like, that's personal information. I wouldn't ask you for your social security number. So don't ask me about what's in my pants, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just asking appropriate questions and then putting yourself out there as an ally. Like, we're always doing this thing where it's called, like, scanning for safety, where, like, the LGBT community is, like, looking for, like, anything rainbow or, like, human rights campaign stickers or anything. Just, like, if you identify as an ally, like, if you put something, like, on a backpack or, like, that's just, like, a show of a show of support and, like, a point of solidarity.
Yeah.
And so I know, like, if I'm in trouble, like, that person's a safe person.
Yeah.
I think for me, the very important thing that an ally should do is never deny someone's identity. So if someone comes to you and they say, no matter what stage of life they're in, no matter who they are in relation to you, if they come to you and they say, you know, I think I'm bi, I think I'm trans, I think I'm gay, I think I'm lesbian, you shouldn't tell them no. If someone comes to you and says, like, you know, I'm bi, you don't respond to them being like, are you sure you're not just, like, straight but just, like, slightly confused? Like, you know, the minute you do that, you are not an ally anymore. That person that just came out to you and trusted you has shut down, and they would rather probably not be in the room with you anymore. So when someone comes and says to you, you know, and says these things to you and tells you their identity, which probably was a struggle for them to come to terms with, and now it's an even bigger struggle to really come to the point where you're ready to tell others about it. The best thing you could do is be like, okay, what would you like me to do? Like, who else have you told? You know, what would you like me to do for you? Especially if someone trans comes out to you, you know, the best thing you can do is be like, don't say, sure, like, you've never seen mailing to me, you've never seen that feminine to me. Just be like, okay, is there a different name you'd like me to call you, and what pronouns do you use?
Yeah.
As simple as that.
The best question is, how can I support you?
Yeah. Definitely. And on that note, I just want to say thank you for coming out and definitely coming on the show.
Do you guys have any plugs? Just give people time to plug anything they want to plug, whether it's campus events or anything you're doing around town. Let people know.
We got nothing going on.
GLSEN, Massachusetts has a conference going on April 5th at, oh my gosh, help me.
Madison Park.
At Madison Park Vocational Technical High School, and you can register for that at GLSEN, Massachusetts. If you Google that, it'll pop right up, and it's a really great conference with a lot of really great stacked workshops. So you all should go because it's a really great opportunity.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, yeah, we'll put the description and all that in the link. And once again, thank you. I'm Greg.
I'm Howard.
I'm Issa.
And you guys, that was The Common Thread.